have you heard about this? The Texas National Guard recently took control of Shelby Park in Eagle Pass, Texas, and is preventing U.S. Border Patrol agents from accessing the area. Governor Greg Abbott signed an emergency order granting the Texas National Guard full control over the park, despite the disgruntled outrage by the federal government. Now, why on earth do you suppose the state of Texas would take such an action? If you guessed that the Border Patrol has been actively undermining the state by sabotaging efforts to stem the flow of mass illegal immigration pouring across the border, then you have guessed correctly. You see, the Border Patrol was cutting the razor wire in Shelby Pass, which the state government had set up to stem the tide of illegal aliens crossing there. Texas officials are arguing that federal agents were cutting the wire to assist groups crossing the border, while the Border Patrol, of course, is feigning innocence of all of this and is arguing that the wire cutting was not a formal policy, as if that made it any better. Anyway, a U.S. district judge initially issued an emergency order back in October that prevented agents from cutting the razor wire except in emergencies. However, she later ruled that the state hadn't met the requirements to issue a wider preliminary injunction, which then allowed Border Patrol agents to continue cutting wires. Now, the Justice Department has filed a complaint with the Supreme Court challenging the legality of Texas' actions, arguing that they contravene constitutional mandates that grant the federal government authority over immigration laws. Now, I'm sorry, but cry me a river. The federal government has been a complete and utter failure in their supposed mission to protect our borders from invasion. The state of Texas taking matters into their own hands. Well, frankly, not only is it understandable, but it was predictable that this was going to happen at some point. You can't maintain a society with untold millions of people mass migrating and then disappearing into the countryside. And make no mistake, that is precisely what is happening here. For example, in 2023 alone, there is an estimated 2.5 million people that cross the U.S. borders. This is a situation that has long spiraled out of control. We can't even begin to imagine just how much of an impact this is all going to have on our country in the near future, especially if something drastic isn't done to end this insanity at the border. Now, predictably and almost unbelievably at the same time, the Border Patrol is crying that the National Guard's actions here are limiting their ability to monitor the border, process migrants, and respond to emergencies. The Department of Justice, or the DOJ, has argued that the blockade is preventing federal officials from carrying out their duties. And of course, there is the hand-wringing over the safety of migrants flooding the border. Now, I would like to point out that that last part is complete and utter nonsense. Our actions as a country, with the free housing, the free welfare, and healthcare that we shower upon these people, especially with the giant welcome mat that we have, has been a boon to the drug smugglers and coyotes crossing our border. And speaking of the coyotes, sexual assaults and rapes is standard procedure. I'll give you an example. There was a report by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, otherwise known as the IFRC, back in 2017, that highlighted that Central American girls are frequently targets of rape by their smugglers en route to the U.S. border. Amnesty International found that 6 out of 10 Central American migrant women and girls were raped while on the move in Mexico, which suggests a similar scenario for children. There is nothing humane about this entire situation. The inaction, or worse, the facilitation by our federal government of illegal immigrants breaking our laws and flooding the borders, is untenable. Something must be done, and Texas is continuing their attempts to deal with this crisis as best they can. However, and there is a however here, this is truly uncharted territory that Texas is taking here. The last time anything remotely similar to this that happened here in the U.S. was during the Civil War. The federal government is directly responsible for this, though. Their inaction for these past decades has led us to this moment. What happens next is, well, frankly, anyone's guess. But it's a place that we can't maintain. This is only going to escalate further, and naturally we'll keep an eye on it as it develops. And that, my friends, is going to bring our episode to a close once more. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. From the To Be Frank Show, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.